When we talk about Parshas Korach, there's one word that really sums it up and comes to mind, and that's the word of machlokas, conflict. There are certain people who really love conflict. Korach was one of them. He was an individual who was not very happy with his lot. He wasn't very happy with his role as being member of the tribe of Levi, from the family of Kehas. He was a person who wanted more. And the way in which he felt that he was going to get more was by creating a conflict among the people and creating a rebellion against Moshe and Aaron. See, Korach felt that Moshe's leadership was self-appointed. He felt that Moshe was using his authority to do things that God had never asked of him, such as appointing Aaron, his brother, as the high priest, as a Kohen Gadol, which Moshe did at the instruction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of God. And so the result of introducing machlokas, introducing conflict into the people, was that God shows who his real messengers are. God shows his love of Moshe and Aaron, and ultimately it ends with the demise of Korach and his followers. Korach represented disunity. He represented division among a community, among a family, and among the Jewish people. Over the last week, we have experienced a very, very tenseful period of time. The Jewish people have united together in davening, in saying Tehillim, in learning, in adding extra mitzvos, extra good deeds, for the sake of the 3 boys who were kidnapped in Gush Etzion. We've all become together with a sense of achdus, a sense of unity, davening together to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to beseech God to have mercy upon these children, to bring them back to their homes, to their families, and to protect the members of the Israel Defense Forces, Chayalei Tzahal, in trying and attempting to locate and rescue them. It's a unity that, unfortunately, seems to only happen in a time of need. But a message that is always sent to us by Hashem is that we have to find a way to be a unified people, even when we're not dealing with tragedy. Stories told about Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, who was one of the great Gedolim, one of the great Talmidei Chachamim, leaders, rabbinic figures in Yerushalayim, that Rav Isser Zalman would have quite a few people lined up every Chol HaMoed outside of his home, and they would come in for a minute or two just to wish him a Chag Sameach. The Gemara tells us that a person is supposed to visit their Rebbe on a regel, on a holiday, and so people would line up to visit Rav Isser Zalman and just literally pass by and say Chag Sameach and move forward. One day, on Chol HaMoed, Sukkos, Rav Isser Zalman asked Rav David Finkel, who was a relative of his who took care of many of his things, to bring him a pen and a piece of paper. And Rav Finkel, of course, did as Rav Isser Zalman had instructed him, but was very curious as to why Rav Isser Zalman would want a piece of paper and a pen, considering it was Chol HaMoed and one is not permitted to write on Chol HaMoed. He knew, of course, that Rav Isser Zalman would not violate halacha. The only way in which a person is allowed to write on Chol HaMoed is if it's a meleches davar ha'aved, if it's something that the person would forget, or something that a person needs, which is critical to the day itself. And so, Rav Isser Zalman senses that Rav Finkel is a little bit uncomfortable, even though he brings him the pen and the paper. And he says, "You're probably curious as to why I asked you for a pen and a piece of paper on Chol HaMoed." He said, "Let me explain to you." He said, "When I have so many people coming by and visiting me on Chol HaMoed, sometimes there are people that may say things that are out of the norm, or there may be people who act strangely when coming to see me. And I don't want to look at the shortcomings of these people. I want to look at only the positive traits, because I want to think in a pleasant sense about everyone who I see. So I constantly refer to a pasuk, the beginning of which says, Einecha lenochach yabitu, that your eyes should look to yourself, that a person should look at their own chesronos, their own shortcomings, when they're looking negatively at someone else. And usually I write that on a piece of paper, and I keep it in my pocket so that I can constantly refer to it when it comes to situations such as this, when I'm going to be seeing so many people, and I might slip and look at someone negatively. So this paper, this pasuk reminds me to look at the positive in people, to have a sense of love for them. Said Rav Isser Zalman to Rav David Finkel, I forgot to write the pasuk on a piece of paper before Yom Tov. So to me, it's pikuach nefesh. To me, it's a meleches davar ave. To me, it's something that I will lose a tremendous amount on if I don't have this piece of paper. And that is why I asked you for the paper and pen, because it's critical that I write this on Chol HaMoed before I see all the people. A lesson from the tragedy of this past week, and a lesson hopefully that will have the tragedy end on a positive note with the rescue of these boys and their safe homecoming to their families, is that we should look at every other Jew not for their negative traits but their positive ones. Shenira kol echad ma'alas chavereinu. We should look at the positive elements of each person, and when doing so, we will constantly think in a positive light about our people unified together as one. May Hashem bring comfort to these families, and may He protect these young men until they come back home to their parents' arms. Thank you for listening, and good Shabbos.